I want to talk about something that hasn't felt right with me for a little bit here. Earlier this week, I was able to accept an invitation that I was really excited about to go on the Mom Room podcast and work with Renee there. And at one point, we got into a conversation about who follows us and who shows up in our comments section. And one frustrating thing that I've observed is I'm trying to make content largely for men and encouraging men to be better parents and partners. But a lot of men don't follow me. They don't show up on my comment sections. But inexplicably, there are a good number of men who will show up in the comment sections of female creators like Renee. But when they show up, it's usually not to say anything positive or beneficial. Usually it's to push back or be rude or be dismissive or misogynistic. And they don't direct that same level of attention at me, even though sometimes we talk about the exact same things. And it's led to this larger thought that I've been having lately, which is, why am I not reaching my intended audience? Because I appreciate all of the folks who follow me. I really do. But I'm also trying to make content to help other men, other parents, other fathers be better. And algorithmically, what's happening is a lot of my content is being directed to women. I jokingly say that it seems like the algorithms are bringing me plenty of singers for the choir, but no parishioners for the pews. And so I'm finding a lot of people who are generally on board and supportive and in agreement with the ideas that I'm sharing. But most of those people are the people who are directly affected by it and not the people who would need to make actionable change. So that kind of got my thoughts rolling a little bit. There was also a comment from someone, I don't remember who, it was on one of my Instagram posts. And they were basically saying, I love your videos, but does it ever get frustrating to you that the majority of your followers seem to be women, when in reality it's men who need to hear the message that you're sharing? And the answer to that is yes. Yes, that is very frustrating. That's very annoying. When I found out that we were going to have our first child, I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to read the books. I wanted to take the classes. I wanted to watch every video that I could. I wanted to be the best dad ever. And part of that involved me taking a class that I recommend for every new dad called Boot Camp for New Dads. It's a program that's available widely throughout the US. You can take it online. I think they even offer it in other countries, like Canada as an example. I think they offer it in Canada. And what they're walking you through is how to transition from being a person to a parent, and in particular, how to start becoming a father, and what your partner is going to need from you in the delivering room and after they deliver and in their recovery, and what is your newborn going to need from you. And that was probably the most valuable class for me that I took. And I took the full-blown birthing classes. I took the fourth trimester, all the classes that they offered, I tried to take. But that was the one that meant the most to me personally. And one thing that really works well about that class is it is co-taught usually by 3 to 4 other fathers who recently became fathers within the last 3 to 4 months. So they bring in their infant babies and you get to ask them questions. You get to hold their kids. If they need to change a diaper, you can get walked through that process. So it's you get to actually see the diaper changing process on a live child. It's this is how this works. This is how I'm going to do this with my child. And the level of confidence I had, even over something as simple as that, was so valuable to me. And I really wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be one of the veteran dads in the program. And I talked to the person who taught my class and I said, I want to be involved. I'm all in. This is a great program. And he said, great, we're always looking for volunteers. We're always running the class. We put something on the books for April 2020. Our daughter was born at the beginning of February 2020. And 6 weeks later, the entire world shut down. And so I never got that opportunity to go back and be a part of that class. And that's something that I had always really wanted to do because I wanted to return that favor. I wanted to reshare some of that knowledge. I had spent so much time and energy learning other things, and I kept thinking, a lot of this feels like common sense, but it's not to some men. And a lot of that course was also, here's how to be a bare bones good partner in your relationship. There were some things that were actually a little frustrating for me in there because they were saying, they won't be able to move around as much. So if they usually do the dishes, you need to do the dishes. If they usually prep the meals, you need to prep the meals. And I'm thinking, why aren't you already able to do those things? Why is the assumption that she would be solely responsible for those things? And that was one of the major motivating factors for why I started posting content online. And me posting content online has been really successful. I spent most of my time with TikTok. I've spent more time on Instagram lately. And I've also expanded into YouTube, which is why you're watching this here. And across my accounts, I have well over 500,000 followers. But when I break down the demographics, with the exception of YouTube, the vast majority of people who follow me are women. And it really did make me wonder when I saw a comment from another creator, and I just haven't really been able to get it out of my head. But for context, this was a video from a creator that I really like and respect, and who I'm proud to consider a friend. It was a friends-only post, and one of the things that she was talking about in there was how sometimes when there are cishet men on the app who are presenting content that is for women, that it can be a bit performative, that it's almost like it's not necessarily for women, it's from someone who is aware that they are being observed by others. And that's something that always bothers me. That's something that I'm always aware of, which is when I put together content, I am aware of the fact that over 420,000 people follow me on TikTok, and 85% of those followers, sometimes more, are women. And I do try and separate that as I'm thinking out the content, and I'm trying to present content that I hope will be beneficial to other men. But it does make me second guess myself. Am I, subconsciously creating content that is meant to appeal very much to women, but not as much to men? Am I not able to figure out how to target content more towards men in a way that's interesting and engaging? Like I thought I was the whole time, but the results are very different. I do have imposter syndrome. I do have anxiety, so I'm trying not to let those things take over. And I am trying to take some ownership in this process, but also look at what are some of the external causes. So it's going to be obvious that the lighting changed behind me. I did record this part of the video separately than the rest of the video. And that's because as I was editing it and playing it back, I realized that I did talk about things like algorithmic bias. I talked a little bit about some of my personal concerns, but there wasn't necessarily a lot of hard work or introspection on my part. And so I do want to say that historically for me, I grew up mostly with a single mom. My father chose not to be very active in my life when I was a kid. And since those visitations were actually court-ordered, mandatory, they were supervised, we had a historical record of how much time he had spent with me. So when he sued for more custody when I was about, I think, 7 or 8 years old, we had a record of how much time he had spent with me throughout my childhood up to that point. And the grand total was 22 and a half hours. So less than 1 full day in 8 years. And I think part of that has led to just a general feeling of, I wouldn't necessarily call it discomfort or unease around men, but it is harder for me to build meaningful relationships with men. And suffice it to say, historically, I've had a much easier time building friendships with women than I have with men. And I do think that, whether I mean for it to or not, comes out in my content. I think that's part of the reason that things like equitable division of household labor is really important to me, that equitable division of childcare and child development and child raising is really important to me. And I think that, paired with the fact that a lot of the content around those topics tends to be pushed more towards women than it does towards men, collectively create a perfect storm where, though I am trying to create content for men, I think it's more so going to women for a couple of really obvious reasons. And a big part of that is because I feel like I relate so much more to women. Now, that said, I am really happy with my life. I love my partner. I love our kids. I love the life that we're building together. But I also didn't want to let this video go on any further without me actually showing that I've actually thought about this, that I've tried to do some hard work and introspection about why my actions might lead to my content being shown to women more frequently than men. I am going to talk about some external environmental reasons that I think that also happens. But again, it did not feel right watching the editing of this video and realizing that, hey man, you're talking about these other things. It sounds like you're blame shifting and you haven't actually done any of the work. So this is me just trying to be open and honest and do the work. I will also say, and I'll say this later in the video, this is an evolution of my thoughts. My thoughts are very much in process right now. So this is not their final form. This is just where I'm at in this particular moment in time. I do have imposter syndrome. I do have anxiety, so I'm trying not to let those things take over. And I am trying to take some ownership in this process, but also look at what are some of the external causes. And one of those, I think, is algorithmic bias, because there are a lot of creators that I follow who I think do really important work talking about equitable divisions of labor in the household, who talk about being an active and engaged and a parent who's willing to grow and try and help their child have the best possible life, while also raising an emotionally intelligent child, a child that feels supportive and creative and engaged and loved. And even when they target content at men, I have noticed that the vast majority of people who are following them or showing up in their comments are also women. There's a really interesting new account from someone that I've been following for a while. You may know them from their original account, First Time Mama Drama. They've now created a new account, which I think is called Nice Guy Stories, but I don't remember, so I'm going to put it on the screen here while I edit this. And basically just horror stories of nice guy interactions that people have had over time. And I remember seeing the original account. At first, I thought someone had stolen her content. I was really upset by this because I didn't know she had launched a new account. So I messaged her. I was like, hey, I think someone took your stuff. And she was like, no, this is me. This is me. And I think her account is important because the phenomenon of the nice guy is an incredibly toxic form of masculinity. It is someone who is literally befriending a woman with expectations that are uncommunicated. It is someone who will lie or scheme and do anything that they can possibly do to be closer to the woman under the guise of friendship. And there are some really tragic stories that come out of this. People who turn and steal their friendship back at a moment's notice, who cause a lot of emotional harm, who sometimes actually sexually assault someone that they consider to be a friend, or who they emotionally and physically, verbally abuse when they are eventually rejected. So this is a really important topic to talk about and confront and draw attention to. But when I go to the comments section for her videos, the comments are almost universally from women. I think I only found a handful from men in the 4 or 5 videos that I looked at. And so even though this topic is a topic that's really important for men to hear and engage with, algorithmically it is being pushed to women. Now again, I know I'm looking at this through a heteronormative lens, that this is a very specific type of spectrum here, and that these dynamics are very different in alphabet mafia relationships. But topics that are important for men to hear, that are important for men to engage with, especially cis-het men, they are not seeing that content. Now, part of that might be that they are not choosing to follow women, or they're not choosing to follow male creators who talk about domestic labor or childcare tasks. But we cannot ignore the fact that, algorithmically speaking, the algorithms behind TikTok, behind YouTube, behind Instagram's content suggestion system will have a bias toward taking things that are typically associated with women, like childcare, like household labor, and only show it to women. And I find that very frustrating, because while I appreciate the strong and enthusiastic support of the women who follow my accounts, ultimately I am doing this because I want to affect some change. I recognize that there is power and privilege that comes along with the position of being a guy, especially being a white guy in the United States. And I want to try and leverage that privilege and leverage that power to do some good. And it's really hard to do that if your content is never actually shared with the people you intend to share it with. And it's also frustrating when other male creators turn out to not be quite as great as you thought they were. There have been multiple instances in the past couple of months where a cishet male creator will show up on TikTok or on Instagram or whatnot. They'll develop an early following. They make content that seems to be targeted primarily at women. And then it turns out a little bit later, they are using that position to try and foster relationships, usually sexual relationships, with the women that follow them. In other words, they are being nice guys, they are being predators. And it, rightly so, calls into question the legitimacy of those creators. It calls into question the authenticity. I would not be surprised if a lot of people would question my motives, if they would wonder, is this guy for real? I literally had someone stitch one of my videos. It was a young woman who said, "Sir, I don't think you realize that all of my hopes and dreams are literally pinned on you being a good person for the rest of your life." Which I take really seriously, by the way. I take that really seriously because I am trying to be a good person. And I look at that as an ongoing, lifelong process. So I recognize this is a very big thought dump. It is. But I think the gist of it is, it's really been bothering me that I try to make content for relationships, for folks, especially men, to realize I might not be doing as much as I think I am. Maybe the reason that my partner is upset with me, maybe the reason that my partner nags me, maybe the reason my partner doesn't want an intimate relationship with me is because they are so overwhelmed with everything going on, and I am shouldering them with that burden, and now they're resentful of it. They're not just overwhelmed, they are resentful. And they're resentful because of my inaction. And that's the type of introspection that I'm trying to spark. Those are some of the things that I'm trying to encourage other men to think about. And I am struggling because I don't know how to get that message out to the right audience anymore. I have no clue. I'm genuinely perplexed. It's frustrating to me that algorithmically, like, there seems to even be gender bias there as well, because it's pushing content more to women than it is to men, even though the content might be exclusively about men, or it might be me directly responding to something that another man on the app has said. And if there's something that I do want my followers to be able to have, it's that they can trust that I am who I say I am, that I am being authentic. And it's hard when you have all of this sort of preaching to the choir type of sensation in the videos. Like, when they go to the comments, they see a lot of other people who are just like them, and what they're not seeing are men who are actively engaging with the ideas, who are doing the hard work to be better partners and to be better parents. And so at that point, it's like, well, great, I'm glad we were all able to commiserate, but is this actually doing what it intended to do? Is this actually changing any hearts and minds? And I don't know. I mean, I hope so. I hope so, but I don't know. I don't know anymore. Yeah, I wish things were different. I wish things were different. It's not that I don't want the followers that I have. I love the followers that I have, but I do wish that more men engage with my content, and I don't know how to make that happen. And even worse, if the algorithm is taking my content about domestic labor and childcare and pushing it more so to women, what content is it pushing more so to men? Because if these algorithms are not prioritizing basic household duties, basic elements of taking care of your own kids, then what the hell is it showing them? And I will end with a brief apology, because I recognize this might have turned into more of a ramble. And at the end of the day, like, I am still processing these thoughts. I'm still trying to gather things around. I would love feedback from others. I would love to know what people think about what I've said so far, because my thoughts are still, they're all over here. I'm trying to get, a little bit more fully formed, but it's hard. There's so many different things to try and think about. And not only that, it's wrapped up in a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little bit of anxiety. It's like, am I actually doing the things that I set out to accomplish? Is it that I don't know how to talk to men? Is it that I know how to talk about things in a way that appeals more to women? And I'm just trying to figure that out. I'm going to be selfish and ask for help and say I would really love to process this through with a couple of other people, not to turn my therapeutic needs into cognitive and emotional labor for others. But I really am looking for feedback here. I genuinely would love to know what other people think. So if you have any thoughts, please just comment below. If you have someone who you think would benefit from seeing this video, please share it with them and ask them to comment, because I'm very much in info gathering right now. My thoughts are still in process, and I would love a bit of extra help.